the Thursday, December 19th, 2024 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals to order. And I will now take roll call. I see that we have Kathy Olson, Danielle Sanchek, Ben Hamter, Andy Conroy, and there's Keith Lyons. So we have 6 members, including myself, Lee Levy, chairman, present for this public hearing. Good evening and welcome to the December 19th, 2024 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. For all present, let's spend a few minutes reviewing how this meeting will be conducted. For the first 2 hours prior to 9 p.m., we shall hold a public hearing on the applications that you received a notice on and that were listed in the Norwalk Hour for hearing. After the application is announced by the chair and read by the secretary, the applicant will state his or her name for the record and then present the appeal or relief being sought. Please present those zoning issues that are relevant to the practical difficulties or hardship requiring this application. After you or your representative have spoken, those in favor will have the chance to be heard. After that segment, those against the application will have the opportunity to state their opposition for the record. In the case of an appeal, the zoning staff will have the opportunity to present their findings. Finally, after those against the application have spoken, the applicant and only the applicant will have the opportunity to rebut and respond to the issues raised. The hearing is then closed and the next application called. New applications will not normally be heard after 9 p.m. as the board must discuss and act upon these applications. Please note that no further public input is accepted at that time. You are welcome to stay for this portion of tonight's meeting, but should you decide to leave, you may contact the zoning office tomorrow to learn about our decision. Before we proceed tonight, I must remind you that this hearing is a recorded video conference and will become a matter of permanent public record. For public comment period, all commenters must state their name and address, and comments must be on topic. Anyone using threatening, hateful, or sexually explicit language will be cut off and removed from the meeting and will not be allowed to rejoin. The first application to be heard this evening is 24-1219-01 Eric Ziegler, variance for the height for the proposed addition to a single-family residence. The property is located at 27 Ensign Road. Our secretary, Danielle, shall read the application.
Right. 24-1219-01 Eric Ziegler, variance for height for a proposed addition, maximum peak 40 feet, proposed 41 feet, 9 15/16 of an inch, to raise and renovate an existing single-family residence in zone CD-1S and coastal area management overlay. Property located at 27 Ensign Road, District 6, Block 57A, Lot 26. Request. The applicant seeks variance for an additional height to elevate and vertically expand an existing single-family home to be made flood compliant. Background. Records indicate that the original home was built circa 1890. Most recent expansion was via a 1995 variance grant for setbacks and increased lot coverage for a replacement attached one-car garage with a roof deck. Analysis and findings. The architectural site plan and variance application indicate the proposed roof peak height is 41 feet, 9 15/16 of an inch. However, the proposed condition survey lists the proposed roof peak height at 42.14 feet and the proposed midpoint height at 35.14 feet. It is important that this discrepancy be addressed, and if variance is granted, that the correct metric is indicated in any motion to approve. The maximum allowed height is 35 feet to a midpoint and a 40-foot to peak. The proposed number of stories is compliant at 2.5. Old zoning regulations prior to February 2024 allowed a 1-foot height increase for properties in the flood zone. However, that was eliminated with the new regulations. Instead, the height maximum was increased in the smaller lot residential zones to match the 40-foot height that was afforded to the largest lot residential zone. While staff appreciates the design challenges inherent in making a home flood compliant, the parcel location within a flood zone is not in itself a zoning hardship. Please find the attached coastal site plan review memo from Amelia Williams. Amelia indicates the activity is exempt from review by Planning and Zoning Commission. However, she notes that it is not recommended to allow significant increase of living space in flood-prone areas. This application requires 2 separate distinct motions. 1, variance request, which must include hardship practical difficulty declaration. And 2, a coastal site plan review, which must include the declaration that the proposal is or is not consistent with CCMA goals and policies and will or will not adversely impact any coastal resources. And then we have the attachment from Amelia Williams.
Now, who's the sitting 5?
The sitting 5 will be myself, Ben, Andy, and Danielle, and Keith. Kathy, you'll sit this out temporarily.
But Kathy, do listen to what's going on, because
Yes.
should this get extended in time, you might need to sit in.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay,
So should I read the
read
memo?
the attachment, please.
Sure. Upon review of our records and maps, it appears that the property at 27 Ensign Road is within the coastal area management boundary. The activity is exempt from a coastal site plan review by the Planning and Zoning Commission, as the proposed area of work is more than 50 feet from coastal resources. However, any application for variance within the coastal area management boundary is required per statute CGS 22A-105 to be reviewed for potential impact to coastal resources by the ZBA. The board is responsible to determine if the requested variance is consistent with the goals and policies of the Connecticut Coastal Management Act, CCMA. And your ZBA findings or motion must contain a statement that the proposal is or is not consistent with CCMA goals and policies and will or will not adversely impact any coastal resources. With this proposal to raise and modify the structure, it is important to consider the potential impact of a rise in sea level, coastal flooding, and erosion patterns. The request of variance of the height requirement allows for an increase of living area, another story, which may result in a significant exposure of life and property to flood hazards. It is not recommended to allow significant expansion of living space in flood-prone areas to be consistent with CCMA flood hazard policy to minimize the threats to life and property. Thank you for your opportunity to comment. If you have any questions regarding the above, please call or email me.
Thank you, Danielle. Will the applicant or their representative please come forward and identify themselves?
Yes, good evening. My name is Louis Campana, architect on behalf of my client, the applicant, Eric Ziegler. I believe he is waiting. Yeah, let him in. Perfect. Our offices are located at 7 Pondfield Road, Bronxville, New York. And I've been retained by Mr. Ziegler to design the renovations. So we're seeking, as mentioned previously, we're seeking a 4.5% variance, which is the ridge height just under 22 inches above the 40-foot max. And we are in compliance with the 35-foot midpoint. That was an error, coordination error. The civil engineer did update his drawing, but obviously not in time to get it to you guys. But we have it, and I have it here to show you guys. So that being said, 27 Ensign is a 2,880 square foot lot, through lot, with a substantial grade differential from the front on Ensign and the other front on Nearwater. It's also situated in the AE 15 zone. And as found on the property card or the field card, the appraised value of the dwelling is $354,700, and any work done that exceeds 25% of that value within the course of 5 years, which is $88,675, will be considered a substantial improvement and resulting in the need to comply with the flood zone regulations. So it's inevitable that the home will have to be raised the 30 inches from elevation 14.5 to elevation 17, which is 2 feet above the BFE. So the BFE, coupled with the depth of the property and also the substantial grade differential, results in an average grade that sits 7 feet below the first floor elevation. So that's elevation 10.1. That's the grade plane.
Could you
in
put
order
up
to-
a property survey that we could see?
Yes, I'll share my screen.
Okay, please.
There we go. I'll share this one instead, because this is the one this is updated from the civil engineer, Land Tech. So in order to minimize flood damage and my client, the applicant's risk, our ductwork and mechanicals and other utilities will be located above the first floor elevation. So as to not have them within that under elevation 17. So what we're doing is we're creating plenums or drop ceilings that'll be located beneath the second floor and also the attic floor, which would be used to conceal those elements, the utilities and ductwork. This results in a 9-foot first floor ceiling height and an 8'6" second floor ceiling height. As I mentioned previously, although we do comply with the max building height in terms of the midpoint of the roof, I believe we're 34'10". Our ridge does exceed the maximum allowable. And if I just go back to the architecturals quickly, and I'll go to the exterior elevation. So the portion of the roof, just for clarification purposes, that would be above that maximum allowable, which is right here, is if we were to create a triangle here and take the area, it equates to 2.9 square feet. It is in a location that is more centrally located on the site, the furthest it could be from neighboring properties, although it is quite dense in that location. And again, the total ask is 4.5%, which I seem to believe that it is insignificant, but I'll leave that to your discretion. But I do certainly believe that the benefit to the applicant outweighs the detriment to the neighborhood in this instance. One of the items that, well, not only that, but the improvements to this property will also enhance the character of that neighborhood, enhance the property value, and uphold property values of the neighbors as well. That being said, going back to the substantial improvement at $88,000, with the cost of construction these days, you can imagine that the $89,000 wouldn't go so far. So, like I said, it is inevitable that the home would have to become flood zone compliant. So the first floor, again, raising 30 inches, and the deck would be being raised 24 inches so that it sits about 6 inches below the first floor elevation. So there was, I think, a little bit of confusion. I know that my client had done his due diligence and spoke to a number of the neighbors, two of which are in opposition. But I just wanted to make that clarification that that deck is only being raised 24 inches. So with that being said, I'd like to, I'd also like to mention that as part of the application, I did include the resolution from the 1995 variance, where the board did deem the I guess the non-conforming lot size as one of the hardships back in 1995, and that the lot size does certainly come into play here, coupled again with the flood zone, which we know Norwalk, most of it is flood zone, and also the grade plane. So with that being said, if anyone from the board has questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well,
You're also raising the deck a couple of feet?
24 inches, yeah. So as to right now, the deck and the first floor are flush, those two elevations.
Yeah.
We're going to create, because of the concern of some of the neighbors regarding that deck, we're going to go 24 inches with a 6-inch step down from the first floor.
You were at what, 30? You're 24. You were 30?
24 inches for the deck and 30 inches for the first floor.
Okay.
Yes.
I had been at that house during the middle of a storm. I was across the street, and the house at the top corner, which is about four up, had waves crashing off the side of the house. As you came down the street toward this house, waves were going over the deck.
Wow.
So I would say it wouldn't hurt to raise the deck a little bit. Maybe you accommodate the neighbor to a degree, but the deck at its old height. Now, I didn't see the waves, go over it 3 or 4 feet high. They went over to about 1 foot.
Wow.
But yeah, it definitely is a problem in a heavy storm.
I hope you're in a boat.
do you
no.
have, I'm
I
sorry,
will
Andy, go ahead. Mr. Companion, do you have any photographs of the adjoining houses, the neighborhood, or a plan showing the adjacent houses?
So based off of my discussions with Mr. Green, which has to do with 23 Ensign, I did put together an analysis just to clarify for him and for his client what the impacts would be with this deck being raised. Now, I know that we had also a letter from 21, that isn't addressed here, just received it, but that is something that can simply be done as well. So after my discussion with Mr. Green, I took information from Norwalk GIS mapping service and scaled it so as to be accurate. These are 1-foot contours, and the grade at the front of 23 Ensign is elevation 15. Here are some photographs taken from the actual listing of 23 Ensign. You can see that the front of the house, elevation 15, is pretty consistent and flat, and there's a series of steps equating to approximately 24 inches. So this house is at or just about elevation 17. This is this is the view from their deck. Okay, this is what the concern Mr. Green brought to my attention was the concern was the height of the deck. So this is a 3-foot railing on top of the existing deck. This will be raised 24 inches. So you can see from this study here, there 23 Ensign actually has two decks, a roof terrace access from the second floor and a first floor deck as well. This dash line indicates the vantage point over the deck and to the seawall at Crescent, the Crescent Beach Road. And you can see that that goes directly over that wall. Here, from the second floor terrace, the limit of view from the upper deck is down the street, so the street would be visible over Mr. Ziegler's deck, and a clear view of the water. So we were very sensitive to to these to the letters and the comments from the neighbors. So that's why I felt compelled to put this together, just to show them that we're not intending on impacting their views here. We want to be neighborly people. So, but in terms of photographs, this is what I have currently. This was.
How much of the existing house do you intend to have remaining when you start this project?
So the foundation is going to remain, okay? And what we're going to be doing is, our structural engineer is working on that currently, but we're going to be capping it. We're lifting the house, capping the walls with 30 inches of concrete, and then sitting that back down. In terms of the exterior walls, the interior walls are not going to be they're not going to remain. In terms of the exterior, now the ceiling is getting taller, so we would be sistering against existing exterior studs. For the most part, if I go to the floor plan, for the most part, it would be this section of wall here. Even though we have expansive glass at the rear, this wall is technically an existing wall. We were very strict in sticking to the existing footprint of the house as well, considering the non-conforming nature. So we didn't want to exceed that. But there will be a new foundation just to, I guess, facilitate the shape and the geometry of the new house, inclusive of the existing.
With the new foundation, at any point around the circumference, do you exceed the old?
Only for a porch, an open uncovered masonry porch, and that is to get up from existing grade to the new elevation. That'll be located. You can see the series of steps here, coming up to a landing, the second floor, cantilever slightly over the first floor, and then we have a masonry patio here. We were mindful of the recent changes in the zoning code, and we made sure that those that the terrace, the perimeter of the terrace, would be a minimum of 5 feet from the property lines, because they would most likely be considered retaining walls.
Let me note that the roof, because I've looked at your drawings quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and the roof looks very different from the existing roof.
Yes. Yeah. So essentially, the existing house is 1.5 stories, and we'll be converting that to 2.5 stories.
Yeah.
I mean, you're asking for an increase in height beyond our limitations. It might be as simple as reducing the roof pitch to meet that.
We did explore that, just in terms of the architecture and the massing. The proportion of the house was just a negative impact on the proportion of the house,
Yeah.
the character of the house.
If you're at 40, you don't need a variance.
I know. It's the mechanicals that we're putting beneath the ceiling joists and creating that drop ceiling. That's obviously because of the flood zone. that's the reason for, like, you could see here, here's our framing dimensions, right? 10'2", but we're going to be dropping it to 9 feet to allow for that ductwork. And same thing here, 9'10¾" for an 8'6" finished ceiling for that drop ceiling to conceal the utilities.
I know that 9-foot ceilings are preferred, but sometimes you have to squeeze dimensions to fit the envelope you're given.
Yep.
Is there a specific hardship being claimed for the ask of 42 feet?
Well, it's again, it's the nature of the grade differential on site. I know that there's other properties that experience that same thing. Because of the size of the property, that the grade plane has to be taken at the property line, and grading cannot occur at the property line, nor is the property large enough for retaining walls to sort of help increase that grade plane slightly. So we have to stick with the existing grade. We cannot manipulate that at all.
Yeah, I think that generally I have voted to stay within the allowed building heights, with the only exception is if a home is built on a cliff base.
Right.
And say I have 3 stories climbing the cliff, but in Norwalk, that is at most a handful of homes, at most. And this isn't a cliff. So I would be disinclined to go with anything over 40.
I kind of echo what Andy is saying, and my perspective is that we vary this, and 5 other houses on the street could come to us and say, well, you gave them a height variance, what about me? So we look at these things very carefully in terms of the domino effect that an approval like this might have.
Okay.
Yeah, I
think
agree
we-
with Levy. These are some architectural choices that are resulting in the request for this variance.
Yeah, Danielle, your point is well taken, that this is more of an architectural request, to suit a design, and it may not be a hardship. I mean, that's something we have to discuss, that, a design preference, to me, in my 40 years with zoning and architecture, may not constitute a hardship. That it's a problem that is eminently solvable with, a very slight modification.
Yep.
I will also assume there is no significant increase in site coverage.
There's actually a slight decrease in coverage.
Okay.
Can you point that out? Yeah.
Yeah, we've gone from 68.2 to 67. It's a minor decrease, but
Yeah.
Just based off removal
Okay.
of existing.
The last variance gave an enormous increase.
Yeah, and it's something. Yeah, the last variance, it went up to 59%, but
Yeah.
when we ran our calculations, our coverage calculations, we were at, existing was at 68. So, yeah, I don't know how that happened, but.
Could you go back to the engineered site plan? I wasn't focused on it, but Do we have any on-site air handlers or other equipment on site?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we have two wall-mounted propane tanks. Okay, the filling port will be 24 inches above the BFE as designed, and then the three air handlers will be on the roof, nestled between two dormers, similar to I believe it's 29 or 31 ensign down the way towards the water. Those air handlers will be situated right here and screened with red oak boards.
Okay, that's a good solution to a sight and visual problem.
And yeah, I mean, yeah, there's restraints, you know, obviously based on the lot size, but
Any other questions from board members on this?
Not for me.
Okay. Well, in that case, at this point, I'll ask if there are any of those participating through Zoom, if they wish to speak in favor of this application.
We have no raised hands.
Okay, then I will ask if there are any participants that wish to speak in opposition of this application.
We do. We have Joel Green.
Okay, Mr. Green?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I don't know if you want video, but I can do that. I don't see the queue though.
If you would also tell us who you represent for the record.
Yes, so I'm just seeing if I can get a video here, but I don't see the option on the screen here. So
The
good evening,
audio
Mr.
option?
Chairman.
Sorry.
I'm sorry?
The video is right next to the audio option, if you see that.
Yeah, I see the
Lower
audio
left.
option, but I just don't see the video option. And I've done quite a few of these, and I think I may have appeared before this board, but I'll just do it on audio, I guess. So good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff. My name is Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport with the law offices of Green and Gross. I appear before you this evening on behalf of Ann Tennant, who lives at 23 Ensign Road, which is just one property away, 40 feet away from the subject property. And, you know, it's difficult. My client really thought long and hard about opposing this application. And obviously, she wants to be a good neighbor and wants to cooperate. But I'll get into sort of why we're here in a moment. But the starting point is that you have an existing 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath home that, as the commission notes from the field card that I had provided, is, you know, recently purchased for $1,500,000. So the property has value. And the point of that, and the point of my submitting the field card is that, and just for the record, is that at no point did the zoning regulations somehow render this property useless for any purpose. And obviously, it's used for a single-family home consistent with other properties in the zone. Significantly, there were previous variances granted, and the applicant attached those to his application, including variances relating to side yard, rear yard, and a generous coverage increase of 24% that was previously granted by the board. Now, one issue that I think, just so that the record is clear, is the grant of the variance back in 1995 was in order to enable the property owner at the time to construct a garage. And in fact, you'll note that the last sentence of that decision of August 15, 1995 is that this variance is granted due to the hardship of a severely undersized lot, which is characteristic of the neighborhood and property, and the request being the only way the applicant can get a garage on this site. Now, it's interesting. I really agree with the commission, with the board rather, and you've made a number of very thoughtful comments in terms of hardship, and you've asked really the questions that this board should be asking in terms of exercising the jurisdiction that you have under 8-6. But significantly, interestingly, that the board in 95 found that the undersized lot is characteristic of the neighborhood. And so this lot is no different than, I counted 7 similarly situated lots next to it. They're all the same size. So this property is not unique, and it's not unique in terms of the topography. But interestingly, the grant here was just for purposes of getting a garage on the site. So that variance was very much intertwined with the notion of allowing this property owner to have a garage. So, you may consult with the city attorney on this, but it would be our position that that variance in this instance, and there's quite a bit of case law on it, that variance really rides with this one-car garage. And it doesn't act as a variance that runs with the land that says that you can necessarily raise a structure on that footprint of the garage, because that would constitute an increase in nonconformity, which is not allowed under the zoning regulations and under the law, particularly where Norwalk zoning regulations also say that the design is to reduce nonconformities as quickly as possible. So having said that, the applicant here is really, in my view, looking to build what is substantially a new home. And I think many of the questions by the board were sort of similarly directed to that. And really, my client wants to be a good neighbor and wants to go along and get along. So she did have a conversation with the property owner and basically said, look, I don't have an objection to you building this home you desire, but the one thing I ask is that you keep the deck over the garage at the same level and that you not raise it another 2 feet. And I know that I guess the applicant had prepared some sort of analysis that I saw this evening. I would have appreciated the courtesy of seeing that. I did have a discussion with Mr. Campana yesterday and expressed my client's reluctance to oppose this application, and that all we were really asking is to keep that deck at the same height. And I don't necessarily agree with that analysis, because you could even see in the picture that the applicant had provided that there is, for example, a grill that, that creates a slight impediment. If the applicant wants to have an umbrella, whatever it is, those 2 feet count. And if the applicant is claiming that those 2 feet are really that minor, then it's difficult for my client to understand why the applicant didn't just leave the deck at that height and go on their way before the board. And, we would have happily stepped aside. But Mr. Campana indicated that his client was reluctant to do that and elected to proceed. So here we are. So once again, you have an existing habitable home. So almost by definition, there is no hardship here. There is nothing unique about this lot in this neighborhood. And as I indicated, there are many lots of the same size. In fact, most of the, with the exception of one, all the lots on Ensign Road are that same dimension, and they all share that same slope characteristic as the subject lot. We believe that the applicant, and as I heard the questions from the board, we believe that the applicant, if they wanted to, could build a zoning compliant home, which meets your height requirements. They can, so they can meet your zoning regulations. In terms of this discussion of FEMA compliance, I disagree on the calculation, and my understanding is that in the AE15 flood zone, it is 50% of the replacement value before you are triggered, but I'm not going to stand on that, and I didn't have the opportunity to look at that this evening. However, once again, even if the applicant runs into a FEMA issue and needs to raise the structure, it would be our position, both based on my earlier argument that they cannot take advantage of that variance that this board generously granted because it was so tied to it being a garage. But significantly, that garage is not living space. So FEMA speaks in terms of raising habitable living space to base flood elevation. Obviously, that garage does not constitute living space. So even for purposes of FEMA compliance, that portion of the house could not be raised. I don't know, once again, I haven't seen the analysis. I heard Mr. Campana making discussions about, or discuss the fact that he thought that the variance was relatively minor. As I think this board is probably aware, the law does not view and distinguish between minor variances and significant variances. There is famously a case in Weston where, oh, the name escapes me, and I usually have it on the tip of my tongue at this moment, but there's famously a case where the house was, it ended up 2 inches over height, or 2 to 3 inches over height, and it was a new construction. It was built out of compliance. And at the end of the day, after the zoning enforcement officer had cited the homeowner for building the house too high, and that case went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court found that there's no such thing basically as a minor variance. So this house is not compliant. So basically, there is no true hardship. There is really no basis to grant variances to raise this house for all the reasons that I've cited. I will just say on the CAM that I don't believe that this is in compliance with CAM objectives, and that I echo the comment on increasing living space in a flood-prone area. So I would urge the commission to look at that as well. And I think for all those reasons, again, reluctantly, but again, we think that the applicant has remedies available to build, a home that is substantially what the applicant wants. And we really have no problem with it. But once again, we would ask that the applicant not raise the deck over the garage any higher. I want to thank the board for the opportunity to speak and for your patience. I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Mr. Green, I do have a question. Are you aware if there are any deeded view rights in this neighborhood?
I did not look at that, and that's a great question. Although, that's a great question. I suppose that's good guidance for me, but obviously that doesn't factor into what the board does. But obviously down the road that would be an interesting inquiry. And not by way of excuse, but by way of an explanation, I was retained on Tuesday, so I'm relatively new to this whole situation, and so it's been a bit of a scramble here with it.
Okay, no, I was just
No, that's a great
my
question.
own knowledge here, and whether
That's
it
a great
applies or
question.
not,
Thank you.
that will be decided during our discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other questions of Mr. Green? Hearing none, I'll ask if anybody else has their hands raised
Yep,
to
so we have,
speak on this issue.
we have 2 more opposed. We'll start with Anne first. She had hers up first.
Hi there. I'm Ann Tennant. I am represented by Mr. Green. I live at 23 Ensign Road, and I will be very quick and try not to retread over anything that Mr. Green has already articulated. I do object with a very heavy heart. We live in Rowayton, a community where consideration and respect for one another are some of our greatest strengths. I do want to mention that the photograph that Mr. Campana put up is a little bit misleading. And as folks who have had real estate agents take photographs of their house may be aware, sometimes real estate photographs tell a tale that is not exactly accurate. In the case of that photograph, it is not one of mine. It was from a prior real estate agent listing. I believe it was taken perhaps on a ladder, perhaps standing up, but I will tell you in all honesty, when you sit on my main deck, my view is already impeded by the homeowner's roof deck built on top of his one-car garage that, but for that variance, would have an unobstructed view of the sound. And that variance, again, was granted for a one-car garage. The basis of the hardship was the need for a one-car garage. The basis of the hardship for which the variance was granted was not for a roof deck, and it certainly was not for a roof deck that is now going to be 2 feet higher and further impede my view. Out of a sense of community harmony, I'm not asking to revisit the prior variance. I'm just asking that the roof deck not be raised anymore. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tennant. Anybody else with their hand raised this evening?
Yes, we have Mylon. I'm going to be all set.
Mute myself. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. I just want to.
Well, hold. Who are you?
My name is Mylan Choa. My wife and I live at 21 Ensign Road, which is 4 houses, in this case, 4 decks down from the applicants. And I just wanted to double down on a couple of comments that have already been made. I wrote a letter in opposition, and I, like Ann, Ms. Cooney, are reluctant in our opposition. Our opposition is primarily targeted at the height of the deck. And if you take a look at the photo that was accompanying my letter, I don't know whether you have it available to you or not.
Yes,
We do.
And if you take a look at that photo, that is a photo taken from my deck. And it looks at the deck at 27 Ensign Road. For perspective, if you look at the sofa that is sitting on that deck, that sofa is approximately 30 inches high. So what the applicant's plan calls for is to raise it almost to the top of that sofa on the existing deck. So I mean, it's going to impair the view of every house north of 27 Ensign Road. And to Mr. Levy's comment, I've been in this home for 36 years. I see every applicant with applying for a variance with the Me Too, why can't I do this? And that's one of my biggest concerns. Once again, I'm reluctant to oppose this. I wouldn't have a problem with it if the deck remained exactly where it is. And the easy fix would be just a couple of steps down from the main dwelling to the deck surface.
Okay, Mr. Chilla, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do we have any questions of Mr. Chilla from the board? Hearing none, Tammy, do we have anyone else with their hands up?
So I thought I saw another hand. Please put your hand up. Okay, yeah, so we have, well, Eric, do you want to speak in opposition to your application? I'll allow it. This is the homeowner?
He's the applicant.
Well, we have to move on from opposition to giving the applicant the right to rebut these statements. So we'll include it in that portion.
And then I think we should note for the record, as the attendees mentioned, they both sent in letters, and just for the
Yes.
record, so.
Yes.
So then, do we want to let Eric speak now or?
Well,
Lou?
let me just say, is there anyone else with their hands raised to speak in opposition of this application? Seeing none, we'll let the applicant speak on his behalf.
Unmute. Louis, did you want to speak first or?
You can go ahead, Eric, and then I'll respond to some of the comments.
Okay. So my name is Eric Ziegler, and one of the, I used to live in the Rowayton Beach Association, which I was president of that. So I'm very well aware of getting along with the community. And the reason I bought this house, was obviously the location, and I understand the importance of getting along with the community. I don't want to raise my house. I just want to be able to live in it because it's pretty old. But I've been always very concerned about the view implications. And in front of us on Crescent Beach, there's people that have put up hedges that have blocked views. So there's no real easements for view easements there. And I know that was an issue a long time ago, I guess. So I don't even leave an umbrella out. I watch where I am. It's just that when I've lifted my house, I wanted to lift my house along with the raise I have to do in order to complete the construction. I did tell Milan and Ann when I met with them to go over it that we were going to raise 30 inches. And they asked me Ann asked me if I can go down. Now it's 24 inches. So when Milan says I'm going up 30 inches, I don't have to. And I plan not to because of that. But I think that being where it is right now, it's supposed to be a one-car garage, and I can't even fit my car in it. I've never parked a car in that garage because it doesn't fit. I think the opening's just over 6 feet. And I can't fit a regular car. I guess if you have a Mini, you can fit it in there. Yeah, so when I back up, there's a little, if you look at that you can't see it, but there's a little ramp to get up from the ground. So it just, my car hits the top of that. So, I look at it and I see that the decks above me, because their land is higher, is that I don't have, I don't feel like I'm impeding their view. I was with Ann and she said, hey, when I sit down, I can't see the 3-foot wall possibly anymore. And that was at 30 inches and I've lowered it. But there's the view is obstructed of the sound, and maybe she can't see the 3-foot wall. But I don't know what to say with that, because I think it would be very difficult for me to step down to my deck, then down to stairs there. But I'm very concerned about, getting along with the community, but I think that it's pretty minimal in terms of view impingement on it, on the house. But I just want to let you know I was very sensitive to the neighbors. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Does any board member have a question of him?
And one other thing, just real quickly, is that, I don't know if I should, am I still there?
Yep.
Yes.
It's just that, and I don't know what the ramifications are. If I were to tear down everything, would I get more land to work with? Could I move farther out towards the street, which would be more impinging on views and stuff like that? I tried to say, hey, look, we'll just keep within the footprint, and then, which is kind of a funky footprint anyway, and then keep the deck and raise it with the house. And I did look at that, and I felt that there wasn't going to be a real issue. And my immediate neighbor, don't know if he's there, who's the most impacted, I don't know if he's doing an objection, but he was not objecting to it at this point.
Hey, Mr. Ziegler, thank you very much. Mr. Campagna, you'll have the last word.
Yes, so just to touch on a couple of comments. So like Mr. Ziegler mentioned, we are sensitive to the neighbors and their view. We looked into it. There are no restrictive covenants in terms of view easements over Mr. Ziegler's property. Going from a 30-inch raise down to a 24-inch raise does make a substantial difference. As you can see in the analysis that I showed you, their view is not impeded by that deck. The reason why we're not keeping that deck at its current location or height is mainly because, number one, like Eric said, you can't, modern cars or at least SUVs aren't able to fit in that, especially with that ramp, or it's a curb, and the slab of that garage actually goes is higher than the street. So that head height in there certainly gets diminished. It was built this way because that's where the first floor was. So they couldn't go up and then step up onto the deck from inside the house. So there was sort of a rock stuck in a hard place at that time. I was just trying to increase that to give him, the space that he needs in terms of the height. In terms of leaving the deck where it is and having steps coming out of the house, it would be a 30-inch differential because the deck now sits flush with the first floor. That would require between 4 and 5 steps, treads at approximately 12 inches deep. That would impede onto the existing deck, which is already, not a substantial size deck, by about 4.5 to 5 feet. So that's for the reason there. And quite honestly, having that sort of transition out of the house could be quite cumbersome. Especially if you're grilling outside, you're walking in with dishes and whatnot, but whatever, that's, for another day.
Some of the neighbors have that kind of transition because they've had the homes slightly increased without the need for variances to avoid having wash come up a concrete surface and enter their house. I think Mr. Ziegler said that he was thinking of 24 inches and you were just describing 30 inches.
I'm sorry, 24.
Which is it that you're seeking?
20. Yeah, I'll correct myself there. Thank you for letting me know that. Yeah, so approximately 4 steps, comfortable steps, 6-inch risers. So, and then Tammy, just question for you. The variance is only specific to the ridge height, correct? So raising this, the garage doesn't require variance.
Correct. Does not.
Right. So it sounds like that's what most of the concern is from the opposition, is the actual deck itself. So that being said, if this were to move forward, Eric and I would certainly have more discussion, perhaps come up with something that would work for the neighbors for that deck. But yeah, I don't think that's on the table tonight.
When we get down the road a bit, I'm going to ask Tammy to take a look at the variance that was granted to I think it's the Robsons, who were the owners at that time, and
Yes.
tell me if a deck was included in that.
It was, well, it says replacement for attached 1-car garage with roof deck. I think their contention is it says that the variance hardship is undersized lot to get the garage on the site rather than garage and deck. But no, the deck was part of the grant.
Yeah, it was granted, and that pushed them the front of the garage all the way out, pretty much almost into the
Yeah.
street. But the deck was part of that grant. So let's just keep that in mind.
Yes, and I think it's important to clarify. You can tell me to not if you choose, but the opposition attorney mentioned our regulations prohibit vertical expansion, and that is not accurate.
All right, I didn't think so. With respect to 40 feet, I'm stuck on it. We have done a few things as a board pretty consistently. Very little variance on our part from those things. And that is, you got to stay within the perimeter of the existing building. And you got to meet, not exceed the building height. And we've certainly had requests to exceed the building height. And we said, no.
Well, let's close out Mr. Campagna's final comments then, unless the board has another question. And I will close the public portion of this hearing, and we will move to discussion. So Andy, you want to continue with your thought?
Yeah, I mean, it's great that they're improving the building because the building was quite old. I think taking the deck up a couple of feet is a smart move. I have a problem in general when people say if you change your structure but lie within the zoning code, that we don't want you to do it and we'll find reasons to get you not to do it. It almost implies that there is some right to the airspace, and there is not. But I do like neighbors to get along. So I would hope that Mr. Ziegler and his neighbor, tenant and Tichilla, would have a discussion and they can come to some accommodation that makes everybody happy. I don't think that we could look at this and say that that you can't raise that deck height. I just don't think that's correct. But I do think we can say you can't go over 40 feet.
Well, that's my primary focus is on this 40-foot issue. And I think I said it in my opening question, is that by reducing the pitch of the roof, the problem can be solved. It may create a volume hardship within the structure, but that isn't our concern. Our concern is the height. And I don't think it's a hardship to go from a 9/12 pitch to an 8/12 pitch. I realize there's a visual impact that, you know, Mr. Campagna and the owner are trying to achieve, but, you know, we have to be conscious of the zoning regulations. And if a solution can be found without having to gain or grant a variance, I'm all for that.
Yep.
If it wasn't for the height issue, it would have never been in front of us, and all this stuff about the deck would have been hashed out in private.
Ben, exactly.
Exactly right, Ben.
You know, I mean, essentially the applicant, you know, if they could have solved it without coming to us, there might have been more room for negotiation on it. I don't know, but that's between neighbors. I will make this comment only because as an architect, I've raised about a dozen houses in my career in flood zones. I think the architect is being very optimistic that he's not going to run into foundation problems and problems with the framing as they try to save exterior walls. It won't happen. And, you know, I understand they don't want to build a new house, but they might get very close to it. That's my comment. I'm not looking for any rebuttal on it.
Terrific. So we're in discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what impediment there would be to raising the deck over the garage, other than have a good relationship with a neighbor. And that's important to me, and I presume it would be important to Mr. Ziegler.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say you can't increase the height of the deck over the garage.
No, I understand, you know, the difficulties of getting into a garage. I worked on a project where we left the existing garage door height in place. My client went out and bought a brand new SUV, pulled it into the garage and ripped the roof off of it because they didn't take a tape measure. So
It didn't stop the look, huh?
no, not at all. Destroyed a brand new Ford Expedition. So I understand that, and you know, that's why I asked the question: are there any deeded view restrictions? And they're not. And I don't think that you know, Mr. Ziegler has any problem raising it. I just think it needs, the height of that deck needs to be, I would say, worked out with the neighbors. I mean, whether the deck can be raised a foot and a half, 2 feet. I think there's room for negotiation between the neighbors.
No. Not on the height thing. I just don't see a hardship.
I don't
I
either.
think they gotta go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I can't even weasel in a practical impossibility. So it's just.
No,
it's
Andy. Well,
just not-
would someone
Hey,
care to make a motion on this item?
What do you suggest, Tammy, that we do it in the positive or the negative?
Think you motion to deny, are you gonna deny without prejudice? Well, yeah, I guess that's a moot point. But I do think you need to also make that separate motion about denying for the coastal site plan part of it as well.
All right. So I'll make that motion that we deny the applicant's request for a variance allowing a higher building height than the required 40 feet max. You know how that's measured? Some weird geometric space age calculation tells you what a building height is. But if you let our esteemed Tammy Maldonado know what you're going to do, then she can make sure you are within the 40 foot.
I will
Okay.
second that, Andy. Or Ben, yeah.
Good. Do we have to make a second motion on the coastal site plan?
Separate motion, yeah.
Yeah.
Go right ahead, Lee.
I'm trying to think how to word it. If you can put words in my mouth.
I think that she puts it in the letter is what you have to do. I have some questions about that, but I'm not gonna ask them tonight.
Now I got to look at the letter.
Shame on you.
The proposal is or is not consistent with CMMA goals and policies and will or will not adversely impact coastal resources is the language.
Thank you, Danielle.
And you just hit the thing I'm worried about, but I'm not going to get into that tonight.
Danielle, why don't you make the motion? I'll second it.
All right, the motion that the proposal is not consistent with CCMA goals and will adversely impact coastal resources? Is that right? Is that the right combo?
That's the way it's supposed to be read, yeah.
Okay.
At least as it's currently explained to us by the applicant.
Yes.
And I don't know.
I'll second that motion. On the first motion, we need to take a vote, hand vote. All in favor of denying the
What's the
variance?
motion? Aye.
Okay, we are unanimous in denying the application for height. And on the second, the coastal site plan, all those in favor, please raise your hand.
Deny.
Deny.
Um,
Sorry, deny. Again, unanimous.
So with that
So that is our
unanimous,
decision this
Dan,
evening.
did you have your hand up initially?
That question to me? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I just keeping record of the vote, that's all.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, so we close this item and we'll move on to item 5 on our agenda. The approval of the minutes of the October 17th hearing. I hope everybody read through them.
I briefly did. I didn't see anything glaring.
I read through them. My name is spelled correctly, and they do accurately represent what transpired at the meeting. So I will make a motion that we approve the minutes of the October 17th, 2024 hearing.
And I second. And
Okay.
bingo.
All those in
We
favor?
vote.
Okay,
Hi.
I'm abstaining.
yeah, Danielle
Alright.
has to abstain, but Ben, Andy.
Who's abstaining? Danielle's
Ben-
abstaining.
I wasn't present.
Danielle was not at the hearing. And Steve
it, right?
Ferguson is not participating tonight. So we do have unanimous approval of the minutes.
We did.
Okay, moving on to item 6, our annual election. And I have let it be known to Andy and to Tammy, I am not going to put myself forward for either position this evening. So should we take secretary or chairman first?
I think you should do chairman first because of
Okay.
the oddity of who can vote and who can't.
Okay. Would anyone like to nominate someone or step forward to volunteer?
Well, don't all rush forward. I'll do it then.
Did you say you'd do it, Andy? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright.
We
Yeah.
have
Are we good?
Andy Conroy as our,
Okay, so I'm the
Nomination?
chairman, and it's weird thing in the damn statute, which I think is ridiculous. Only the regular members within the group of 5 that we have seated tonight can vote. There must have been cheating way back when, and they came up with this weird rule.
That takes me out.
Until we get to secretary, then you're in.
yes.
Oh, it's for chair only.
That's only the chairmanship is in the statute.
Yeah,
that
it
you
must
can
be
do it.
voted on by regular members.
Regular
Interesting.
members are called, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
we have 4 regular members
Yeah, well,
and
one vote.
unless anyone comes,
Yeah,
there's 2 votes.
vote.
There's 3
Any-
votes.
anyone else wish to step forward for the position of chairman? Hearing none, I'd like a hand and yay vote for Andy Conroy as chairman of the ZBA in 2025.
Yeah, it's a 1-year deal.
Yes.
Yay.
Okay. So
All right.
unanimous vote. Andy, you're stuck with the job for next year.
Then you're going to move on to secretary, and Ben can vote in this.
Yes, Ben can vote.
I have a
Does that make-
recommendation if anybody wants.
Does that
to
make
hear it.
Kathy eligible to vote?
No,
No. Okay.
because you've seated a board of 5.
Yes,
I used to
you're
think you
correct.
could do that. and
You're-
If you had 8 people, all 8, that was wrong.
Okay.
You have to go with the board that's seated, regular members only within that seating.
Okay, you've
Sure.
got the parliamentary procedure down.
There we do. Finally.
Okay.
Long last.
Would someone like to nominate?
I will nominate Danielle Sanchek.
I will second that.
I'll
I think
vote for.
Danielle has done a very good job and I know how difficult it is.
Yep.
So anyone else wish to put their names forward? Hearing none, I'll take a vote on the position of secretary for Danielle Sanchek. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Hey,
and just.
The
a
ayes
quick-
have it.
Just a quick note,
Unanimous.
that the legislature didn't mention a vice chairman, but then they put the duties in. And the duties of the secretary are the same as the duties of a secretary and a vice chairman.
Yes, and the secretary does step forward and
Yep.
cases where the chairman is not available.
And then select somebody to be
Secretary for
in-
the evening.
In their stead, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, the second last item is the 2025 calendar, which I hope you've all taken a glance at. Tammy had me review it for any conflicting Jewish or Muslim holidays. I found none. And this is the tentative calendar we have established for 2025. Please signify by raising your hand and a yay that this calendar is acceptable to this board. Aye.
And without it,
Uh,
you have to notice in June that we're in the 4th week instead of the 3rd week because of
Yes.
Juneteenth.
Yes. So the calendar is approved unanimously for 2025. And the last item on our agenda, and my last action as chairman of this commission, this board, is to make a motion that we adjourn the hearing for this evening and for this year. Before I sign off, I want to wish everyone happy and healthy holidays. All in
Indeed.
favor?
Right.
Aye.
All in favor
Right.
of.
Again,
in
that's
favor of
unanimous.
signing
If
and
something should
happy holidays.
recur on this, just keep your notes.
Yes,
You never quite know.
I know. Everyone, it's been a pleasure working with you as the chairman of this board for the last year. And I look forward to being seated with all of you through 2026. You're stuck with me.
So do I.
We
I
all
look forward to
forward
it.
to it.
So everyone be
Right.
well for the holidays and we'll see you next year.
Yes.
All righty.
Right.
Take care.
Yeah.
everyone.
Happy
Yeah.
holidays.
Holidays.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.